okay, I guess I better start where, like the folks, why they moved. To start with, Dad, years ago, like in New Brunswick, and it probably was the same here, I think, the youngest in the family pretty well looked after the folks, and that. So, and my grandma had passed away. I don't remember her at all before I was born. But anyway, Dad being the youngest of the family, we moved in with Grandpa, and that's where I was when I was born, in in Bathurst, New Brunswick. We were east of Bathurst, what they call it, along the Bay Chaleur. If you look on the map, there's a Bay Chaleur right by Bathurst, and we lived along this bay. I would guess probably 10 miles east of Bathurst, at that time. Dad was on a little farm. It was only 40 acres, and they farmed a little, and then he fished too at time. And I remember going fishing with Dad. I probably was only probably 4 years old then. And I can still, when I go back, I can still show them where I used to crawl down the ladder to get on the boat at the wharf. And so I still remember that part of it. And anyway, then in the winter time, in order to make a living for a family, and at that time, he had to go to the bush in the winter time, so he was gone most of the winter, So then Grandpa, the Blakeleys had moved here about, I think in 27, up, where the Blakeleys live right now. And that was, Mrs. Blakeley was Dad's sister.
Oh, really?
And of course that was Grandpa's daughter. So anyway, he come out to see how things were going out in the west, and of course they hit that good crop he come out in 28, and that was one of the bumper crops they had at that time. And 29 was a good crop. So anyway, Grandpa come back and he said, just told Dad, and he owned the place and all, he said, we're going west. Just like that. So, and then of course Grandpa owned everything, so like Dad has told me afterwards, he said, what were we supposed to do, because it was his place. We'd either have to buy it from him or go along with him, and he wanted us to go with him. So then they decided that they'd move west. So that was in the fall of 29. And I can still remember when they left there, like I was saying, I was 5 years old by then. And leaving and all the relatives, the boo-hoo, and still remember a lot of that. So anyway, we headed west, and it took 6 nights and 6 days and 6 nights to get here, and my brother, he'd just been, he was born in April, and this is August, and then I was, he must have been a year and that much, because I was 5, and Flora, there was 3 kids at that time, and I can remember coming out on the train, and quite a thing. The only way you get in the air, you had to have the windows open, and then the smoke from the old steam engine would come in. And of course, I was, I can't imagine me like that. But anyway, I was laying on the couch with my feet out the window, how a 5-year-old would do, and knock the bottle off out the window. How we happened to be. That time we were in a town somewhere, so Dad, some reason, he got the bottle in. And anyway, we come here in the fall, and they were thrashing up at Blakely's. They come in and picked us off the train here with a team, of course, and it's the only way had to travel at them days. And
you came right into Consell?
Right into Consell, yeah. And then, so Dad helped. They were thrashing at the Blakely's at them days. Like a good crop like that was all cut with a binder and then thrashed with a thrashing machine. So Dad helped Claude, was Mr. Blakely's name was Claude, and haul grain. And I remember going and crawling up in the wagon, but Harville wanted to go too, of course, so I had to hide from him, I remember, and crawl up on the wagon wheel and get inside the box and sit down till Dad got out in the field so he couldn't see me. And anyway, then, so then that winter, my uncle Henry, like he lived up there, do you remember the Smiths? You'd remember that,
yeah.
Big house there. But he wasn't married then, and he had developed TB, so he was in the sand in Fort Capel. So Dad looked after his cattle. He just had 2 or 3, and the horses in the winter, like, so that's where we stayed the first winter. And then, I guess no, Harville could have been, no, he was coming 2 years old then, because my brother Gerald was born on the 30th of January, and Dad got a team. And okay, to start with, Mrs. You know where Carmen Smith's, okay, she came and stayed with Mother, and us kids went down and stayed with Carmen. We raised Cain down there. There was the 3 of them, and then, well, 2 of them at that time, and then the 2 of us, Flora and I, and anyway, we were staying down there, and Dad had to take a team, and I can't even imagine it now, but it happened. And drove to Vidora to get the doctor, see, or cross country, because in the wintertime, everybody was using sleighs. See, there was lots of sleigh trails from Smiths into Consul, see, but not to Vidora. See, that was cross country, and there was quite a lot of snow that winter. And then he got another team at Blakely's. Went the rest of the way, brought the doc back, and he got back in time, if you could imagine. I would have, you know, I'm guessing it'd take at least 6 hours, you know, and then just think all the time he was going, what he had running through his head, eh?
Yes.
You know, it was something else.
What's that, Doc Johnson?
That was Doc Johnson, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, then that winter then, of course, Dad was looking for a farm because he's seen that big crop in 29 too, so he was looking for a place. And then that's when he run onto the Tommy Watts, the Watts where that's the Watson place we're on, like Gordon and Bob Watson, his folks. And so that's when we started farming. Well, then in the fall of 29, that's when the Depression hit, and everything was worth nothing. Like a lot of I hear the guys talking about the 30s. Like I remember Don, when we had no crop in 85, he said, what in the world did you guys do in the 30s? Because most people think we had no grain at all in the 30s, but there was some grain. But it was only worth 18 cents a bushel. See, the Depression hit, so nothing was worth nothing. It's hard to explain. So we hit that. Well, then we got in the 30s, and Dad bought the farm, and, you know, I can't even remember anymore how much he paid for it. But anyway, he couldn't pay for it because nothing was worth nothing. So then the government stepped in and paid it wouldn't be much, but at least give the family something. But then they wouldn't let them foreclose, because what good would it have been for Tommy Watson to take it back? He couldn't do nothing with it, and he couldn't, it doesn't matter if he grew anything, it wasn't worth nothing anyway. But yeah, I remember Dad, and that must have been, I would say, at 34, I would guess, or 35. We were hauling wheat to town, Dad was, and I was only 14 then. No, I was only 12 then. And I remember driving a team behind Dad, you know, going into town with a load of wheat too. And I remember Dad getting 18 cents a bushel. And you couldn't even, one load of wheat wouldn't even pay for a load of coal. You know, like we had to have coal for the winter, like. So that's why the Depression, that's why nobody had nothing, you know. My sister and I, we come into council, I don't know how, and that's hard to believe too. See, she'd have been 8 and I'd have been 6. And we drove a horse, and in the wintertime, a horse and a stone boat, not even a sleigh with shafts. And you know what a stone boat was like, running up into the horse's heels and going downhill at home there by the creek. You know, I always hated that. And anyway, we'd come in, but then this one day we're in here, and you wouldn't remember the Bartlett, so you'd remember some Bartlett. Dorothy Bartlett, wouldn't you? Yeah. Jim, you know Jim and Dave. Yeah. Okay, that's their house where right at the corner there. And so there was a storm come up, and we hooked up the old horse, and we were going to go home. Quite a real blizzard on, and but it was like 6 and 8 years old. We figured, well, the horse will take us home. So, but Mrs. Bartlett sent Paul out and stopped us, wouldn't let us go. He said, I'll help you put the horse back in the barn. Well, there's Dad sitting at home, figuring these 2 kids are out in that storm. And so he had to hook his team up and come looking for us. Well, then so he come in, and here we found us at Bartlett's, and she wouldn't let us go. And so anyway, that was one of the experiences. But we drove that for 2 years, and then we quit. I don't know how come. I guess we figured we were too smart to go to school, or I was anyway. But anyway, Mother started teaching us at home, and by that time, then there was 2 more. See, Ernie was, okay, Gerald was born in January of 30, and then Ernie was born in 32. And then Hazel in 34, I think it was. No, 36 she was born, Hazel. But she wouldn't have been there. But anyway, there was us 5 kids she taught us at home then. And took correspondence lesson, but then I never liked school too good. And then it was in the summer, then I was always wondering what Dad was doing, and then when I got, like I say, 10, 12 years old, I figured I was big enough to do anything, and I was up helping him. And school didn't mean much to me, so actually I only had the 2 years of school plus a little bit of correspondence. So I never got far in school. I don't know. Anyway, so that was the 30, and they were tough. I mean, they were, you know, being young like that, we really didn't realize, you know, but like I remember still getting 7, then we got on, we had to get on relief. We had no money at all, like, and got $17 a month for us 6 kids. By that time it was 6 kids and the folks, and $17 a month, that's what we got by on. But then, like I told Don, like in '85 when I was explaining to him, I said, well, we didn't have any money. Well, what do you mean you didn't have any money? Well, I said, we didn't have any money. And well, how did you live? Well, Mother always grew a garden, and they milked cows, and then she'd sell butter and eggs. Always had chickens. And you would take them to town, and you'd sort of trade it for sugar and salt and stuff like that. But as far as money, there just wasn't any money, see, unless, because that's all we got for relief. And that didn't start right away. I forget when it went, when it did start. So that's how you got by, you know, but there was no phones, like I told him, and no power. And in the wintertime, the roads weren't good. You never drove a car in the winter time, you know. So you just didn't have any money. Eh? You didn't need any money, I should say. It sounds crazy, but that's the way it was. The church started here, and well, first you mentioned the Brethren Church. Well, I don't know when that started. Only what I heard, like the Swiharts, the Reesers, the Strickers, and all that, they all come to this country out of the Dakotas, and they were all Brethren people. Now I don't know whether, and the Palmers, you know, and no, he was a preacher, Ziegler's.
Oh.
You know, like Ira and George Ziegler's dad. Yeah, he was the minister. Yeah.
Oh.
Of the Brethren Church.
Well, was it kind of an evangelical church, or?
Yeah, it was, well, I don't know a lot about it. We were married in it. Mary and I were married in it. Anyway, so that, okay, they come in here, like, I don't know, I'd say in the early 20s probably. No, they come in a long time before that. Because Swihart's coming, no, around, I would say 9 and 10. That's when they come to when the most of them guys. So they probably built that church shortly after that, you know, would be my guess. Then in about 32, then the Church of God, then a couple of gals from the States, the Soderbergs were the ones that actually they had belonged to this church in the States, like, and they come up here. They were out by Senate out in your country, like, well, you know, that's Charlie Soderberg's house there that you go by every time when you come to town. And then the other one was just about a half a mile straight west. Well, I think there's a few trees there of Sandersons. Straight, yeah, west. Okay, that's where the other family lived. So them two families, they lived there, and they got, there was a couple of lady evangelists, they called them, that came up, and that's when they started holding services here in Consell. And then that's where the Church of God got started. But the Brethren Church, some of them left the Brethren Church at that time, a few of them, but it carried on. Well, we were married in 44, and it was still going then, like, and I don't think it was much longer after that. But anyway, see a lot of the Strickers, and they moved away. See, a lot of the people started moving away again then, see, and then the younger ones, the older ones, were starting to die off, and that's what happened. Then the younger ones just didn't bother, you know how it goes. So yeah, so that's when the church started here.
Well, and wasn't there a Bible college here too?
Yeah, right where that building is sitting right by the bakery there, that's where it started. Yeah, that was in 36, in the winter of 36, 37. That started there. Yeah, and they must have about 25 or 30 going there. They stayed at some of the homes around, but a lot of them stayed upstairs, boarded upstairs. And then Mr. and Mrs. Pettyjohn, she done the cooking, and he was just handyman around there. Did you know you probably didn't know Mose Pettyjohn, but anyway, be Ernest Pettyjohn's dad and mom from Mary Flat. They're from Mary Flat, like, and they came and done the cooking and yeah, that was in 36. Then from there it moved to Robsart to the hospital where the hospital is still standing there. And it was there for about 4 or 5 years, and then it moved to Moose Jaw, to some big house there up on the hill, on South Hill on Moose Jaw, south and east. There, one house is still not their house. There was 2 houses just alike built there, and the one that they used for the Bible school at that time. Through the 30s, I don't know if I can any more about the 30s, only that they were tough. Then we never had no crop till 42. Then was the next big crop we had. So Dad started in 30 and he never had a big crop. Well, he had some crop, like I say, but it wasn't worth nothing till 42. And I can't even tell you offhand. Runs maybe 50 cents a bushel it was worth then. But the big thing is that they had a bumper crop, grain piled everywhere in piles, but then they had to, because nobody had any granaries, so it was all piled outside. Then we got a wet fall, and a lot of it rotted. Never got, I remember I was okay, I guess I need to, that was in I started working down at Research here in 1940. I was just 15 years old, and I started, I figured that, well, Dad would be one, you know, I'd done a little thinking them days, and I knew the folks were hard up, but we were never hungry, and but I figured, well, it's one less to feed, so I went to work out at Research there. I worked there 4 years, actually, and it was just like a second home to me. So then the big crop in 42, yeah, and that's how come I remember we hauled, they had a lot of pigs, he run a lot of sheep. At one time, I remember we had 500 ewes there, you know, plus cattle. And so I was, and pigs, because I hauled a lot of that spoiled grain from McLuhan's down here to feed to the pigs. I remember that with a team and sleigh in the winter. So it was quite a kind of, so I worked here, and then, okay, and I think 43, Joe got called, had to go to the Army, and they went into the Air Force, like. So I was staying here, like, and I got my call, but I was able to get off because we delivered milk. Research delivered the milk to Consul. Plus, Pete was, you know, he was getting up in years then. He was all alone. So anyway, I was able to got off. I never went to the Army. Like, I was too young to start with, but in the later years, like when it got to about 44 there, I was old enough then. Well, I was old enough to get married, so I must have been old enough. But anyway, yeah, so I worked there. So in 44, then Mary and I were married. And I was only 20, but I was a big boy then because I'd been working for 5 years on my own even at that time. And so then I took over riding the PF pasture out here, like, because Joe, that was, he rode the pasture at that when he got called. So I took over that. I was running that pasture, but we got the big sum of $35 a month for that. But okay, when I went to work at Research, the government paid them $5 a month for keeping me, and then he gave me $5 a month, so I got $10 a month. Or I should have only got $5, but he gave me his $5 that the government paid him, because I worked like a horse, and I used to be able to work them days. I don't know, can't imagine. I was only 15 years old, but I milked like 6 cows, and fed, well, all them sheep and cattle, and fed, well, you worked all day, you know, by hand. You forked hay on, and you forked it off, but it never hurt me any. So anyway, then we were married in 44, and then that winter I said I went down to Ritterats there. And then Everett Blakely, besides breaking horses, we used to unload carloads of coal here in town for Leif Hilmerson. We got $10, you know, for unloading a carload of coal. But we thought we were really in the hay day them days. Yeah, so anyway, that's the way we spent that winter. Then Russ Kennedy, do you remember? You'd remember him. He had this land, or he was looking after this guy by the name of Dick Russell, and that's where the Blakeleys, James Blakely lives now.
Oh, okay.
Then just north or northeast of that, then that's where we used to live. Like, we used to live a mile from where we live now, just a mile east, or west. There's a couple of granaries, yeah, just on the other side of the creek there. There's 2 granaries there now.
Is that where Patty and Saloma lived?
No, they lived right beside us there, or where the friend just across the creek from us. Like, no, we were a mile. This was before we moved here. We used to live in 52. We moved over. We were a mile west. And anyway, that's some of Dick Russell's land. So I bought that from Dick, but Russ Kennedy was looking after it for him, and so I bought that land there, and then went farming in the spring of 45. So we moved back to that house. I always remember why she ever stuck with me. You know, that shack of a house, they used to store wheat in it, like in 42. They had filled it with wheat, you know, and of course the mice were playing hide and go seek up in the attic all the time, and hate to even think about it. But anyway, but we thought we had the world by the tail, and okay, sounds bad, but everybody was in the same boat. Then in the spring of 46, of course, I had the misfortune of my horse falling with me and broke my leg. And right up here, like, you know, we're up by where Howard McKelvey lives now, you know where Howard is, and then Henry on the hill. Well, I'd brought the horses there. Them days, our horses all run out in the loop, everybody's horses. So I was rounding up my own horses because I had some to break in the spring. Was coming down there when I got right by Howard McKelvey's there. They headed north on me, you know, and instead of coming, so my horse she was a real good horse, was trying to get ahead of them. And okay, by that time, it's spring, a lot better spring then. That was the 4th of March, but there was water everywhere in the sloughs, but the roads, no roads were open, so they had trails all through the fields, you know. And so anyway, this here horse, I went through a slough with probably had a foot of water in, but here I didn't know till afterwards. Walter Hulahaw had got stuck in there with his dual-wheel truck, and there was a big hole, and my horse hit that, but it wasn't the horse's fault. She couldn't see it, and down she went. And then, and it was real greasy in the morning. You know how the ground freezes up at night, and then it was already thawing out. So we down, and boy, she went flying by me, and about that time, here I hit her. There was a rock sticking out of the frozen ground about that far, and I just hit that, and
that would hurt.
Broke, well, I don't remember now. So then my uncle, when he seen me go by, then and then he seen the horses just turn and go north, but then there was a hill, not a big hill, but enough so he couldn't see me. And here I was on the other side of this hill, see, but it's a good job he was still looking for me. And when okay, the horse come back, and I thought probably I could get up on it, and I got a hold of one of the strings from the saddle and got started up, and then my leg bent here. So I knew that was out. So then I threw my cap in the air, and he seen that. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd have still been laying there or what, but there was nobody, you know, that's no man's land, sort of. So anyway, he come down there, and then Alec McKelvey and them, they never got along, you know, fought like cat and dog, you know. And anyway, well, he said, I can't do anything. Well, I said, go and get Alec. And he did, you know, he went and I don't know how that all worked, but they forgot their differences and got me in the back of Henry's truck.
Oh, Cliff.
Yeah, oh, that ain't none of it. And I got as far as where we used to live then. We just straight west there through the fields and that, and then Dad came over from there. And I was just laying in the back of Henry's truck, you know, trying to get through these mud holes, and and it wasn't good. But anyway, we got there, and then Dad came, and then we had an old couch that used to be lots of them around, and they put me on that. Well, that was worse. So then we had to go, there's no roads across to the highway, so we had to go to Console and around, and then to Swihart's, and I said, I can't stand this any longer. I was bouncing around back in that truck, and well, what are we going to do? I said, get Wilson to drag me. He had a 4-door car at that time. I said, drag me in his car, and well, how are we going to? I said, just tell him to. So he was there, and I said, just grab me and pull me in. So he did, and then I passed out like but not for very long. I could, it'd been nice if I could have stayed there, but I didn't. So then we headed to Maple Creek, and the roads were blocked from here, there to the park were all blocked too. Seeing they were all through the fields and crossing plank over the ditches. I remember, and anyway, they finally got me there 8 hours. Took them 8 hours to get me to come. I got over it after that. Then they put a body cast on me, and finally,
Maggots.
but no maggots, no maggots. But they, yeah, I was in that for 9 weeks, and
So who helped out at home then?
well, the neighbors come and put my crop in for me, and yeah, see, it was all done before I got in. So then, then we were in the farming business then. So I farmed from 45 was the first year till 50, and boy, we had a beautiful crop. Not one of them 40 bushel crops. It just waved in the wind, and we got a frost on the 13th of August and just cooked it. It wasn't worth nothing. Just and I thought, well, there's got to be something. You know, you just shell it out. And so I cut some with a binder and got my father-in-law's thrashing machine. I used to run it and thrash them. It was nothing but bran, just nothing but bran. So that didn't help. So that was 6 years and had nothing. So then then 51 though was a fair crop, but we never got it off till 7th of December, because it had rain. It was raining all fall, and I remember Mary out there hauling grain in that half-ton truck with them 2 little kids. But we got by, and then but 52 was the big one, and then we got 52, and from then on it I don't know. Of course, I worked for Seaford here for 2 winters to put food on the table, and I don't know, we managed. We were never hungry, in fact. So anyway, then okay, then the kids start coming along. Doreen was born then in 47, and Dawn in 49, and then Deb in 54. We had 3 children at that time, and but I don't know, life went on and kept improving a little all the time. Doreen, she went through as a nurse, and yeah, I don't know what year she graduated, but she graduated and nursed for quite a while, and then she married Larry Coles. And then then Kathy come on the scene. Oh, then Deb and Garth, might as well go on. She met Garth in Bible school, Garth Reeser. And so then anyway, Deb and Garth were married, and Doreen had 2 boys. And they lived at Golden Prairie, like until they separated. Then Dawn, of course, yeah, they had 3 girls lived there, and then Deb had 2 girls and a boy, Deb and Garth, like. So they live at Wetaskiwin right now. He was into the ministry. He was a preacher when they were married, and then they served over in Haiti for 7 years.
And what did people, like in the 20s and 30s, what happened when somebody died? Like, there wouldn't be the same way it is now. No, they, like my grandpa, okay, I'll tell you that story. He died in 32, and he was in the Shaunavon Hospital. He died of pneumonia. And so, I don't know, oh, Dad had the old Model T at that time. He probably went and got him, I guess. Then he brought him in, and he was like, there was only 1 bedroom in that old house, and 1 bedroom, and the rest of us slept around wherever. There's 6 of us kids, and anyway. But anyway, this 1 bedroom, they put him in there, and
in the coffin, like, and then put, we always put up ice in the wintertime, like in the fall, so you have a tub of ice underneath the coffin to keep it cool, like, you know.
Oh.
Yeah, to keep the body cool. So, boy, I can't tell, you couldn't keep the body too long, you know, but I can't remember how long. Then you, you went down, dug the hole, like I did, not for him, but I've dug lots of them. And you dug it yourself, and then in Elmer Palmer, like that would be Jim Palmer's dad, and you probably don't remember him, but Jim and George's dad. He sort of looked after things around he was sort of our undertaker, you know, and he just sort of organized the thing, and you had a service, and had a preacher, and then we had a Democrat with a light wagon is what it was, and you put the coffee in there. And I remember I had the black old Jim and Jip was the team. And I felt so sorry for them horses, because they trotted them all the way to town, which is nothing now, but I was just a kid, and I thought, oh, they'll be so tired. All I was thinking about was the poor horse. Yeah, so that's how they looked after
But they didn't have undertakers and things like we do now.
No.
And what about farming? How has it evolved since you started?
Well, started with the horses, and it's and harrows, and the way the wind blew, and now the technology, and well, like I say, sprays, and then the equipment, and they farm better, and they don't work the fields so much, and it holds the moisture so much different, and I can see a big difference. Well, we've seen it at home there, like where he sprays rather than, and he has worked the field, like when you break up grass, you got to work the field some to get it in going again, and then, but a field that he just sprayed and not worked is always better crop, you know. It's holds the moisture a lot better. And when they started that first, I thought, forget it, what a mess, you know, that weeds growing, not weeds, but old stubble on there. And I said, how do you grow a crop like that? But that's how you grow it. It was when at my grandpa's funeral, they sang that song, Where You Lead Me I Will Follow, and something spoke to me. Down the road a few years, I knew who it was nothing but the Lord told me.
Find that your religion has carried you through
to me it I think
the good times and the bad times?
Yeah, absolutely. But I know many times, I'll tell you a couple of them, and we've all had narrow escapes. But when I was riding this lease out here, I was roping a calf, and it was the same horse, this good horse, but everything had to work right for her. But anyway, they always put all the cattle in the lease, and we had to mark every calf. Every owner had a different mark on the calf. And so I'd rope this calf and by the hind legs, and I pulled my horse up to stop, and the one line broke, and she turned around and took a look at me like that, and she just took about 2 jumps, and off I went backwards. So my foot was caught in the stirrup then, and away we went, wide open. And she kept kicking at me, but the rope that was on this side, but the rope that I caught the calf was on the outside of me, and kept me right in against the horse, so she couldn't get a good kick at me, you know. And so finally, and nothing but the Lord told me, grab that rope that's coming behind you and pull. And I pulled my shoe off. Like I grabbed the rope that the calf was still on, and pulled my shoe off and got off. But I had lost my glasses and cap, and of course, and she run about another half mile, which Of course, I'd have been like the calf, but then I thought, so I went over. Oh, my brother, he was with me, but couldn't do nothing about it, so I grabbed his horse and took after her, and she finally stopped and turned around and looked at it like she was supposed to, like. And here I was taking the rope off the calf, and I seen him blink, and man, in about 5 minutes he was up and going. And she drug him that long by the hind leg. So probably I'd have lasted that long too.
What was there, like, when it started? How did it get started, and how did it change?
Oh, yeah, that's a big story. No, not a big story, but it just changed this country. See old Jimmy Gardner? He was in at that time. You might have heard about him. He knew he had to do something, you know, and he was a good old premier, I'm telling you. Anyway, he decided that we need to do something for this country because a lot of it was still grassland. So we had the cattle, or we could have had the cattle, but we didn't have nothing for them to eat. So then that's when the irrigation, then he decided to build them 2 dams on each side of the lake there, and then dump it back in the creek again, and then take it out like the research here. These old ditches were in at that time, and so were the other side too. See, that's an outfit by the name of Richardson, and then on the other side of the, like Richardson and Gilchrist, you probably don't know that, but that's where Gilchrist homesteaded when they come to the country first, is the half section on the creek where we live.
Oh, really?
That's the Gilchrist homestead. Yeah. In fact,
that would be Rube and Sandy's.
Yeah, well, their dad, and then they were old enough, like Rube was. He was a, it's in the history book, one of the history books there. He'd have been in his 20s anyway. Yeah, he was home, and then that's where it started. Yeah. And anyway, then they built this weir, and then the Richardsons, they done all the other side of the creek, and then it was all done with horses. And, then in 45, first they built these dams. Then all they did, they had to dig the ditch, you know, a lot of that ditch from the dam was a lot of dirt. Boy, that's a deep, you know, when you go up to, you've been up to Bros.
Yeah.
You know how deep that ditch is. By that time, they were running cats and scrapers, see, by that time. But to start with, all they had was dump wagon. They were going, but what they were doing is giving all the farmers work, see. See, that's why they had a dump wagon, and all they had was a cat and an elevator scraper, an elevating scraper, that elevated into the dump wagons, and then they'd pull onto but it was that old gumbo and chunks of dirt as big as that, or half the size of that, but that high, and crawling over that with horses. It was terrible. I don't know how long the horses stayed with it, but then they finally ended up doing it with cats. But they had great big tents, and there'd be like 100 teams, and I never worked on it neither, but Everett Blakely did, and different ones around. Yeah, and the East End was the same. All the people from Robsart and Vidora, that's where they got work, you know, and they'd go. You never got much for it, you know, like I forget what the wages were, but it was terrible. But it was something. Like in the 30s, they had no money, so anything was worth something, you know, and even though they wrecked there, it was hard on horses. And
do you think the area would have developed the way it has without the irrigation? No. Because, see, they couldn't even,
there was no way, like, okay, that was 37. They wouldn't have been able to grow any feed of any kind till 40, or till 41. 40, what was 40? Oh, we had a good year, and that's the year grasshoppers moved in and cleaned the country right out. And okay, they come in the fall of 39. That's right. They flew in, and there was a crop that time, but they flew in and cleaned this country. right out. You know, you can't even imagine. Well, darkened the sun when they came in. You know, and it's funny how it all worked, and they done the same when they left. They all decided, well, it's time to move where they were, I guess. They were starving. They knew enough to get out while they still had strength, I guess. And they come in from the southeast, and they left in the north. I don't know, they always travel the same direction. That's the way they left, too. But they came in and just clean. They would just, like I remember research, they always had gardens there. And they marched through that and ate that garden. You cannot believe that. And then it got so bad that they, there where Billy French used to live, you know, that house right along there, it used to be Jack Scrivens at that time. He was always kept his stuff in such good shape and that. And they actually ate the paint off the house, you know. Yeah, and I never could figure that out, why it wouldn't kill them. But not the whole, it just speckled it. It didn't clean it or anything. And the same, like the women, they couldn't hang the clothes, your clothes on the clothesline. They'd eat your clothes, like, you know, you couldn't, no. Oh, you can't imagine how thing. So then that was in, so then they laid their eggs, see. So then 40, we had a lot of good rain then, and we'd had a bumper crop again Friday, or 40. But then them stupid things, once they hatched, and then that's when they brought sawdust, they poisoned sawdust, and you got out and spread it on the fields, you know, and they thought they could stop them. Well, it was just, well, they fought them, I forget how long. I remember hauling the stuff out from, well, yeah, I worked at Reese's here. And spreading it, and you're supposed to spread it with you, but they were spreading it with their hands and everything else. I remember old Mabstone and trying to save crop, and so they ended up eating her all anyway. And then they got, so they starved themselves out, and then they flew out. But that fall, Ted and Wilson and I and Earl Palmer, there was nothing here, no harvest, see, nothing. So we went up north around Fox Valley and harvested that fall, just to get a little money, you know, because there was no work here, because nobody had nothing to do, and no. So then we come back in the fall though, and then once they flew out in time. That because of all the crop started growing again, and it got up and even headed out before the frost came. So we had oodles of feed that fall. But that's the first year we'd had any feed, you see, since they started building these dams. See, so there wouldn't have been, you couldn't have cattle if you had nothing to feed them, you know. No. Even in the 40s, the early 40s, we used to put up Russian thistle and different. That's before the irrigation really got going. Then they got that irrigation going, and then like I was the first one on that ditch to irrigate. That was in 45 in the fall. I remember I had 7 acres I had seeded alfalfa in it, and so I had hay, but I must not needed the hay because either that or I needed the money, worse, because I sold my hay to Olson's over at Robsart. They run the dairy in Robsart, and they wanted this alfalfa hay. I remember selling them hay. Yeah, you did whatever you had to do. But no, then the cattle started building up, and that's the same time when they were building the dams. They were fencing. The government took over all these PF pastures, they weren't PF at that time, and put them into PF pastures. But like this one, and some of this junk that's going on nowadays, I can't believe it. If it was Stanley Schmidt and Oscar and a bunch of them guys, they'd have wished they'd have kept it. Now they'd have wished they'd have kept it, eh? Mm-hmm. But they told them it'd be so much better if we get the PF and take it. So they turned all their leases because they had I don't know whether they called it a co-op them days. I don't think it was such a thing, but an organization. They were running like Bob Murray's and Schmidt's and that. They were running cattle down there then.
What's the PF now?
What's the PF now? Oh. But when the PF come in here and wanted to take this land over, they turned it over to the PFC. And then they come and put all new fences in. And then they paid the guys for digging these post holes. You dug them all by hand. And you just dug a hole. When you got it done, then you kept walking till you found a stake where there was no hole yet. And you dug one there. And most of the time it was with a crowbar and digging that dry old ground. And oh, brother. But it was a job, eh? They'd have a foreman there, and he probably had, I'm guessing 30 men under him, like, you know, and he probably drove them, some of them, from one hole. I forget. I never wasn't on there neither. But no, I was too young, no, they wouldn't have taken me then, even though I could have done it, but I was too young.
Yeah.
That'd be child labor. They'd have you for it now. When I was farming there, I still remember the guy up by Jim Maxwell. He wanted to go to BC for the winter, and he had, I think, 5 cows, 5 head of cattle. One was a yearling and a calf, and he said, I'll sell you these 2 cows, but, he said, I need $500, and then if you winter the other ones for me, anyway, we had a deal made, you know, but I needed $500. So I went to the Bank of Montreal in East End and asked him if I could borrow $500. So I gave him what I had. I had, just 2 or 3 cows or something and farmland, but that didn't mean nothing. You couldn't borrow 5 cents on land them days. And he said, can you get your dad to sign for it? No. I said, I probably can, but I'm not gonna. Well, he said, you got to have somebody to sign for you. No. I said, if I can't get $500 and I said, I told him what I had. There was a calf and a yearling. I remember I was going to put the one in that's when seniors could put a 4-H calf in, and I was going to do that. I'd fatten him up, and he'd be worth so much in the spring. But he wouldn't lend me that $500 unless Dad would sign for it, so I wouldn't do it. So finally, Fred, he must have had enough money to go without it because, okay, winter my cows, and you can pay me in the spring. So I did, but I got enough out of that 4-H calf to pay for that thing, and I had another 1 or 2 left over, you know. And but you know, you couldn't borrow nothing. Well, even south of town, and that was 63. All that the government would lend you then when we bought that 7 sections of land down there from Roy Gold, you'd know him. Mm-hmm. And he wanted $30,000 for 7 sections of land.
Oh my gosh.
But all I could borrow was $20,000. And I was already 63, you know, I was well established as far as my land here, and I wouldn't know how many cows, I wouldn't have a lot of, well, that's what we bought it for, is to run cattle. But anyway, that's your limit that you could borrow, was $20,000, so he wanted 30, so I had to go and find a partner. So that's when I went and got the Swihart boys. Well, that's what, and I knew I didn't have enough land at home. I had to do something, and from then on things turned, and well, it only $9, it figured out to $9.85 an acre. That's what that place cost us.
Oh my gosh.
Now 1/4 of it's worth that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but you got to have a few shots like that in the arm when you're in the farming business or cow business or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I still maintain, and I can see, you know, look back at even guys like a bunch of them guys from out of the Robsart lease were all moved up to Rolling Hills to the irrigation, you know, and we got to know the well because they went to the church over in Robsart. Got to know them real well and visit them up there, and they wished in later year they'd never moved.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, because see, you know, they moved in '39. They left this country. Well, that's when things started turning around, and all they got was a bunch of just raw prairie, And hard work. They worked like dogs up there with irrigating and no, but I can see the people, not all of them made it in this country, but anybody that was willing, your dad, and willing to work and buckle down and watch. You didn't spend, that's what scares me today, some of this spending that's going on when they don't know for sure where it's coming from. I hope, we hope it's coming from there. But as long as you know where it's coming from, it's all right to borrow money. But not unless you know where it's coming from, and you better be pretty careful because things don't always plan out the way you want it to.
Yeah.
But anybody that stuck it out here and was willing to work and plan, yeah, they're still here, turning the farms over to the parents or to the kids.
Yeah.
And
can I ask how you met Mary?
oh, well, of course we went to the church together, and then they're only 5 miles away. So no, I'll have to say, she's the only one I ever went with, and man, I sort of fell in love, or whatever you call it, there when I was about 16. I don't know why. I don't know. Always really, I don't know. Seems like it's the only gal that I ever had any interest in. Yeah. So I was only 20. And she was 21 when we were married, and but it's been a good life, and we've had a good life. But like I say, and I've told her different times, I don't know how come you ever stuck with me with what you had to live with. She was born right over there in Vidora, right in the house. In fact, she just about didn't make it. She was only 3 pounds when she was born. In fact, the doc, and that was old Doc Johnson, he figured she'd never make it. Like he figured, well, I don't know whether he figured she wasn't alive or what, but he just sat her down in a box there, and it was just a shoebox, is all, on the oven door, and they just, well, they thought that she was dead, and then who in the world was it there? They always have a midwife. Somebody was looking after her. Anyway, she said that baby's not dead. I seen him move, and so anyway, they pushed it into the oven a little farther where it was warmer, the oven door, and anyway, she made it. Somebody was saying, like last year I was irrigating, and so do you know how to irrigate yet? Well, I said I should be. I started in 1940. What does that figure? I don't know, 65 years?
Yeah.
I've irrigated every year but 1 year when we didn't have any water in the lake, so I've irrigated every year since. So I had a young couple, and I'm getting terrible. I can't even remember who it was, just trying to get started, or just, this was 2 years ago. They said, Cliff, if you were starting over again, what would you do? And I thought a minute, well, I said, I don't know nothing else. So I said, I suppose I'd come right back here and start farming again. But I said, we've never been hungry, and we've always had a roof over our head, and it's a good place to raise a family. So I said, what more do we need?